Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Ladd, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 165. We are continuing our run of fantastic guests this year with someone who some of you will be familiar with. I know some of you are, and some of you will not be, which is really nice. Which is what we just had a little chat with the guest actually, and they've just been listening through some of our back episodes and things, and said that obviously they've got people they've heard of before and listened to the podcast, and they knew they would be interested in that, but also being introduced to, you know, some people that you may not have come across before, and sometimes those episodes, really, really good because they're surprising. So, and also before we crack on, I just want to say we are now live on the website. We have healthoddity.com, and if you go on there, Pete's done a great job. We have every single episode on there. And you can listen to them on there. You can watch them on YouTube. And we're going to be, hopefully he wasn't offended when I called the website basic, but I said it's kind of basic at the moment, but we're going to kind of be building it up as we go and adding to it. What I really meant was it was a work in progress. So we're moving on.
You're digging yourself out of a hole there, is what you're saying. Thank you.
So no, but yeah, healthoddity.com. And as well, I just want to say, if you can, we are going to try and expand our reach a bit on YouTube. So if you do use YouTube and you have like a Google account or whatever, or you ever go on YouTube, if you can find us on there as Health Oddity and subscribe, that would really, really help us expand our reach on YouTube. So now let's crack on. I'm going to go to Paul Bassett first of all. How are you doing, Paul?
Good. Just on the new, my wife above me is tearing up the living room at the moment, pulling out all the carpet and everything, and it just looks like the room of requirement from Harry Potter. It's just full of random things just tipped over with no carpet, and actually you can see where some holes are in the floor.
I hope she doesn't accidentally pull out the internet cable and make the Wi-Fi any worse.
I've put it on my phone's hotspot because I just think it's going to happen.
Happen.
Or she'll come crashing through the ceiling and just... which is quite topical for today.
Holes in the floor, all made by an 8-year-old boy who thinks he's a spring, but he's more like a baby elephant. So
okay, fair enough.
Could be a bit like what's it? I was going to say something like Only Fools and Horses with the chandelier falling from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Anyway, excellent. Are you okay though, Paul? Anyway, apart from the DIY going on around you.
I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
Oh, good. Okay, Pete, how are you doing?
I'm feeling a bit spaced actually because I've been staring at my screen, uploading episodes to the website. I'm on 116 in podcast land recording, so when this comes out, they'll all be there. But the last 3 days have been a bit. It's reminded me of when I used to work in an office, and I was knackered all the time because I was just sitting staring at a screen for like 8 hours a day. It's really horrible. And then I go outside and I'm like, I'm zoned out. So it reminds me of why I don't like doing that.
Okay, but I've seen that the Bath walks or the walks Bath as the numbers are increasing on that. More and more people are getting involved. It's good actually. The individual walks, there's actually roughly the same amount of people, but it's different people each time. So we're building a following, and then eventually it'll start to gain momentum, I think. And I've had a few people from different parts of the country as well saying, "Oh, I wish I was down there so I could come along." And I'm like, "Well, watch this space because we'll be coming your way. We'll be going national, hopefully at some point." Yeah. Excellent. Right. So what we will do, guys, I'm going to introduce you to our guest today, who is Oli Mell from Wolfpack Fitness in Cheshire. Now, I've been sort of like connected with Oli online for a few years through mutual friends and through friends of the show as well. We've obviously had lots of people involved in Kettlebell Sport in the UK and Ireland on the podcast, including, Finbar Toulan and Ben Morris and Lauren Emery and lots of other people, and obviously internationally people like Denis Vasiliev and things like that. David Keown as well, yeah, from Ireland. And Pete and I first went along to Northampton last year to the Kettlebell Pentathlon kind of championships there, and we saw Oli compete and participate there. And I was back there again this year and saw Oli there again. So we will kind of hand over. Well, we'll have a little chat. First of all, how are you doing? Oh, I will say before I introduce him as well, we're very lucky and glad that he's here, because he had jumped out of a plane this morning, and we were a little bit worried that he was a few minutes late coming on, and there was a moment where we were like, I hope he landed okay.
But as Paul said, you always land. It's just.
Well, I hope he landed okay. Hope the parachute opened, but the parachute did open, and he's just done a skydive this morning, and he's joining us. So how are you doing, Oli?
I'm okay. When you introduce it like that, it sounds like the most rock and roll day that I've had, to be honest. For context, for my birthday, the gym people at the Wolfpack got me pulled together and got me a skydive. They knew that it'd been something that I've been talking about wanting to do, and kind of like I had this bucket list of things that I wanted to do with myself. And it was a really great experience. So a big shout out to Tilstock Skydiving Club. It seems now it's done and it's over so quick. You kind of want to go up there and do it again. To be honest, like you feel like your moment just it happened too quick. Yeah, I was fine getting here. Yeah, the landing was fine. I was on a tandem to somebody else, so I just did what he said and pulled my legs up, and that was it.
I know it's me and my wife Steph both did a skydive at the same time. Quite a few years ago, and like you say, you get down to the bottom, and the first thing you want to do really is just go straight back up and do it again, because I think like a lot of these things, the first time you do it, you're so. It's so exciting, and it's all new, isn't it? And you kind of don't really kind of feel you appreciate it at the time, because it all goes so quick and there's so much going through your head at the time. But no, it's a fantastic experience. So Oli, I mean, just like I say, some of our guests know you personally, and some of our guests know you personally, and some of our listeners will know you personally as well, and will know a bit about you. But I know you've had a very kind of varied career. In terms of your health and fitness and training and getting to where you are now. But do you want to maybe talk us through a little bit of that journey and kind of how you progressed to arriving where you are today? And then later on, we can talk about some of the fantastic kind of world, records that you've got and the kind of stuff that you do now, if that's okay.
Yeah, fine. I mean, how far back do you want to go? Because I sent you quite a lengthy bio with it, so you can go as far down the rabbit hole as you want.
Yeah, I suppose, to be honest, because when people come on, I mean, were you always active? You were always active as a teenager, as a kid, and growing up? Was sport part of your life or not?
Yeah, yes and no. It wasn't. So I grew up with a very different sort of introduction to sport, and I grew up getting into fitness through very different avenues, really. So I grew up in a different country. My dad worked abroad, and I grew up in quite a multicultural environment. So we moved to England when I think I was about 8, and before that, I had access to there's a lot of American families living where we were living in this kind of place that's kind of almost set up for people who were working it was in France where I was living, and it was people whose families were working there from different nationalities. So in that respect, I never grew up with this culture that you did football, rugby and cricket as the main sports until I came to England. So the first sport I got into was basketball, and that was kind of, my brother was a very important figure to me growing up, and he was over 6 foot by the time he was a teenager, so it made a big fit for him to go into that sport, and I kind of blindly followed him along. I can remember kind of wanting to play baseball as a kid, because that was the sport all the Americans kids would play as well. And I learned about American football before I learned about rugby in many senses. But I played basketball up until really sort of university level, and then it was one of these things where you either have certain attributes that help you do the sport or you don't. And I kind of took it. I remember reading the book Cooler, Cleaner, Closer with like Michael Jordan's personal trainer, and he said a similar thing. Like he loved the sport, but he took it as far as his body would let him take it. And what I was wanting to do with myself all the way through as a kid was I was actually really into acting and drama, and I wasn't really, apart from basketball, and I did some weight training for basketball, and me and my brother were like, he got a weight set because one of his problems was at 6'7", he was really skinny, and he needed to put some muscle on to handle how physical basketball actually can be as a game. But for me, wanting to get into acting and do that as a living and as a career, it was a very fickle kind of world. So it was very much based on, back then, there wasn't many kind of P's and Q's minded about how they told you. You just had to look a certain way. And that was a lot more important than your actual skill for auditions and things. So I had a few minor bits of kind of getting some extra time on TV sets and some small stage productions, but nothing that was ever going to pay bills or get me off kind of like surfing my brother's couch in London between shows and things. So my dad pulled me aside and kind of said, you're in a bit of a grey area here. And I was a bit too young to kind of want to hear it, but he convinced me to look at going to university. And so I went there to do drama. I basically sent some showreel stuff off, and Manchester Met just gave me an offer and just said, look, just turn up in September. And when I did that, I kind of thought this would be a good place to, all the other kids there were 18 years old thinking they were going to be the next Brad Pitt. And I kind of really knew how unbelievably unlikely it was that any of us were going to do this degree and actually do anything like it for a living. And I started to mix a lot more of the sports students. So I lived in a house full of sports students, and I got back into being sort of as fit as I could be. I got into Taekwondo. That got me into did a bit of kickboxing. That got me into MMA. And interestingly, with kettlebells, I kind of think that there's quite a lot of people like that, but it comes from that. A lot of them tend to come from a background of having done some form of quite tough sports first. There seem to be a lot of K1 or full contact karate guys, and you kind of see it at the comps where you see the old uniforms that they're wearing. But during being in that environment, I kind of figured that I was left with two skill sets. One was fitness based and one was drama based. So I could have become a drama teacher in school, like quite a lot of failed actors become, which I didn't really want to do. So instead, I qualified as a fitness instructor, and I worked in a commercial gym, and they paid for my personal training qualifications. And that was where I met a lad called Paul Connor, who I don't know if Strong First kind of was there around the same time as him from London Kettlebells. But I could tell straight away looking at him that he knew what he was doing with these kettlebells. And so I took him on as my trainer. And within like the first two workouts, I thought, this is about as close as I can get in terms of intensity as trying to fight someone who's better than me, which is kind of in my, if you've done BJJ and you've got someone who's better at strangling you, trying to strangle you for 5 minutes, that is one of the most physically exhausting places you can ever be. And simply like, if you're sparring against somebody who's better than you, it's like trying to out sprint someone who's faster than you. It's just hell on earth. So I remember doing these kettlebell workouts thinking, this is the closest I can get to that feeling without being punched into the face or strangled. So it very quickly kind of made me think this is, and it was all very, like the concept of this being a sport, just none of us knew about it. Paul Connor learned from Jason Kent, who was the first person to get in touch with Steve Cotter. And this would have been 2009, 2010. So I did one of his instructors he had the Movement Performance Academy, the MPA. So I did his certificate, left that gym as an instructor and went to where I kind of like live now in Cheshire and went to a private PT studio. And that was the time that I kind of thought a lot of people were talking about what trainers needed as their thing or their niche. And I didn't want to be this general fitness guy. I wanted to have something that I wanted to get into. And I just kind of dived down this rabbit hole of how much can I find out about kettlebells. So at the time it was RKC and Pavel and Dragon's Door. And then from there, kind of I kind of exhausted all of that. I can remember thinking I was the first person to do a Turkish get up with a 40-kilogram bell. And then going on YouTube and finding like every person in his dog was doing it with a 40-kilogram bell. But around that time, around 2010, 2011, Steve Cotter came to Leeds. So I did what I think was one of, it probably wasn't the first, but probably one of the first IKFF certificates in Leeds for Steve. And that was, again, another kind of experience, because the rules of the sport, I was really kind of, it was one of those things that once you got past 10 reps and you got shown how to do it properly, for me, it became a very natural fit. And I kind of figured, well, I want to go and compete in this. There wasn't an EKA. There was nothing outside of really Russia or America that was doing this. So I flew to Detroit for the 2012 IKFF championships, and randomly happened to be on a platform next to Sergey Rudnev, where he was doing one of his sets. And then I spoke to him and I had a great weekend with these guys. Mitch Blackburn, had a great time seeing him. And these guys in my head, I kind of thought like, this community is something that I could be a part of. Like the people in it are a really welcoming group of people. And I just had a moment where it's just kind of like, you stood on a platform, you had people watching you had people cheering you, and something clicked that I thought, this could be the thing that I could do. I did go back. I joined
at that time, Ollie. You're just going to ask, those first competitions that you were doing. What were you doing? Were you doing like biathlon? Were you doing like a long?
Yeah, this was biathlon. Yeah, so I when I first got into the sport, quite ironically, I kind of vowed I'd never do long cycle ever in the sport. Which seems quite funny now. But yeah, it was biathlon. So I had no knowledge. I mean, this was ironically without knowing anything about each other. This is around the same time Del Wilson was going off to the IKMF for the first time, like on his own and doing his marathons and half marathons. But I had no knowledge whatsoever that there was anything other than GS, which was biathlon. So I flew out there to do that. And then I had this 4-year absence when I was serving. And I kind of, when I came out in 2016, all of a sudden there were these infrastructures in place for kettlebell sports. We had an English championships, a British championships, or like a Welsh championships, a Scottish championships. So quite naturally, I kind of thought, I'm going to walk in here and whoop everyone. And I waltzed in there and was kind of blown away by how much better everybody was to me. I can remember looking up at people like Tim Joseph and Chris Guile and Gary Rothwell and Dell and Helen Cleaver and all of those people, Abigail Johnson, that were just lifting ridiculous kind of weights. And I kind of thought, well, I'm not going to be deterred by this because I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I kind of thought, I want to get as good as these guys. So I started training. I started taking it as seriously as probably as I took being in the Marines or anything I'd taken up until that point. I ended up getting in touch with David Curran, and he took me on as a coach. And that was around the time I started getting up the qualification ranks for GS, for amateur on 24s for biathlon. And then I found half marathons. And I think for whatever reason, the moment I found that, I just thought this works for me. Can
you just explain, Ollie, what a half marathon is for because we do obviously have people who listen who are into GS, but we've also got a lot of people who aren't. And I'm always, so many people within the general kind of fitness world and the strength world have got no even idea that you can compete with kettlebells, have they? But because we're in the world, we kind of think they do. But most people have got no even idea what the competitions are. So what is a half marathon with the kettlebells?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's really worth going into actually, because you're right. Quite a lot of people go, you do this as a sport. I mean, a kettlebell was something that appeared on an Amazon advert in COVID, and that's kind of it for a lot of people. So a half marathon is a 30-minute set. And you can have done it with 2 bells, but typically it's done with 1 kettlebell, which is the main difference between that and what we call GS, or these 10-minute biathlon lifts. So the rules of it are quite simple. Essentially, it's long cycle, which is the clean and press. Half snatch is very popular because you can't do that in other affiliations. A snatch or just jerk. The rules are half an hour, and the main limiting factor is like a race. If you don't last the time, you didn't finish. So if you in GS in 10 minutes, depending on tactics, and I've done both, you can go out ahead, try and outlift people fast for the first 4 or 5 minutes, get to 7-8 minutes in, think you've won it, put the bells down, and your score counts. Whereas for a half marathon, if you don't finish, you get 0. Which means this thing of this real mindset of you have to finish the race. The other thing worth talking about how I sort of program for it is I have a large background in strength conditioning other people's sports. So I work with quite a few footballers, quite a few football teams, some rugby teams, some swimming teams, to varying levels. But the one thing I have a large history in for the first few years I was personal training was doing triathlon programming. It just happened to be that that time, 2007, 2008, there was a big thing about doing an Ironman, doing a triathlon, doing 10K runs, half marathon and marathon runs. So when I was kind of qualifying for these, and when I was sort of coaching myself to a large extent with this, what I realized was we've done courses for standard biathlon sets for the last 10 minutes. So there's a lot of information out there on how to train yourself or a client to lift a kettlebell for 10 minutes, for jerk, long cycle, or snatch. There's nothing really in terms of programming. Yeah, there's a lot of work on technique for how to do pentathlons and marathons. There's a lot of skill in the technique with it. But you ask somebody for a 12-week program for a marathon, and they kind of go, well, we just lift. And there's no science to it. Whereas if you took that, so if you were a coach and you had somebody who wanted to run their first Ironman, or for example, their first half marathon, the idea that you just get out and run isn't gonna get you anywhere. But having stages, having your macro cycles, having your micro cycles, working on your long run, your short run, your recovery run, your sprint sessions, all of that, I took it and I applied it to my own half marathon and marathon training. And almost overnight, I saw real progress, particularly when I kind of like went, well, maybe I should sit down and kind of like write my own book on how to do this. And then when the gym opened out and we started training people, and a bit like how you had Dennis said, it was quite interesting. When I opened up my gym, I thought it would just be a gym. I didn't think it would become this center where sort of 30 to 40% of the England team for the IKMF kind of come from. I didn't think anybody would be dumb enough or mad enough to kind of try and follow me there with it. So the first kettlebell classes I did were just hard style training, really for like rugby players and people who wanted to get strong and powerful. And when they saw me going off to these competitions, I didn't think they'd want to follow suit. And then particularly in lockdown, it became so easy to do competitions online that the people at the gym were kind of like watching me film stuff, and they're thinking, well, okay, like we'll try and have a go at it, and we'll try and do it as well. So, but yeah, going off rail. So that's what a half marathon is that 30-minute set. A marathon's a 1 hour set. And then there's the 2 hour set is that what they call a super marathon. And when it goes on from there, people do like 3 or 4 hour lifts, but the rules change. They put the bell down, have a cup of tea halfway through, go to the toilet. And that's kind of not for me. It's kind of that you have to stay in the race if you kind of catch how I feel about it. So I stop it at 2 hours. I've got no interest in going any further than then.
Because we spoke to when we had David Keown on, and he did the 2 hour long double 2 kettlebell long cycle, didn't he, with double 16s, 2 hours, and you've done, I mean, we can touch on this now. You've done a 2 hour single bell 24 kilo long cycle, haven't you? So you can change hands as often as you want, but you're not allowed to put the bell down for the full 2 hours.
So me, Dale Wilson, and Sarah Jarvis did it together in our gym in January. Susie Edge was going to do it as well, but she was ill at the time, so she couldn't do it. So I've talked to her about the way the IKMF run it is, even though that was a world record, you've got to you've got to let somebody have a chance to beat it before it gets officiated, and no one's attempted to beat it. So I've turned around to Stefan and said, well, in January, can I do it again? So I'm going to attempt to do it again in January to beat it, just so I can have it like officiated as a world record. Plus also I kind of, in an odd way, I kind of enjoyed it. It was one of my more favorite lifts. I think there's a thing that like, the beauty of doing this sport where I see it is no matter what stage you're at, whether you're doing it on your own, doing it for an iron submission, doing it at a national, or doing it at a world champions set stage, it's still just you with a bell, with a task to kind of last. And for me, those 2 hours were just the most peaceful 2 hours I had that whole journey. In terms of what was going on that weekend, we're having quite a few issues at the gym. It's a lot harder to manage a gym in the winter. It's kind of like a bare barn kind of structure. Hosting a competition as well at the time. So my phone kind of goes off around these competitions. You're training people, you're busy all the time. You guys know running your own businesses. So to get 2 hours when it's literally just you and the kettlebell, it's some of the most relaxing things I can actually do with myself. And I think that kind of ties into the whole side that it doesn't matter what environment you're in, it doesn't matter who you're lifting against, it doesn't matter what the stakes are, it's still you versus you, and it's still you versus the kettlebell. And that doesn't change whether you're filming Fidel's online kettlebell challenge for a 5-minute set. It doesn't change whether you're going to break a world record. It doesn't change if you're doing it in front of 200 people. Like, it's still like the primary factor is it's just you and your relationship with you and the bell.
And I think
it was interesting when we spoke to Dennis about this, actually, because he's obviously streets ahead of like everyone else and has been for years. So his thing was he has to compete against himself.
Yeah, there's no one else left.
But there's no one else left. But if he doesn't, someone will catch him up where he is, because people do improve. So someone will catch him up, and then all of a sudden he's not. So it's kind of it's one of those things. It's on the what's his name, Eddie the Eagle, that film, isn't it? Where there's the flying fin and Eddie the Eagle, and he says, the flying fin says, like, we're the ones who are who've got the most pressure on. He goes, because you're expected to just turn up and jump or whatever. He goes, I'm expected to win. And everyone else in between, it doesn't really matter because they're just expected to do whatever they do. So yeah, it's interesting, actually. I find that fascinating.
I was going to say, Oli, you did, so in that 2 hour set with the 24, you did 1,227 reps. Is that right? I think that's what you said.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's 1,227 sort of long cycle. So is that like a clean and jerk with one?
Clean and jerk. Yeah,
clean and jerk with a 24 kilo bell in 2 hours and not putting it down. And it's amazing that you kind of say that it was actually kind of like a peaceful time, for you to do that. I'm sure most people listening kind of think that's, they think, well, how can that be? That sounds like agony,
Well, if you go back to jumping out of the airplane, it goes so quick that you can forget to enjoy the moment. And one thing that this will make a few people will laugh when they hear this. So some of my lifters, when they take the step up, and this sport's kind of weird in the sense that we've done very well with people who wouldn't consider themselves athletes, and I've taken a group of people who haven't really been in what you call a high pressure environment, and they can very quickly become overwhelmed by it. And one of my biggest things I do work with them when I'm preparing them for competitions, you don't just have to prepare these people physically, you've got to prepare them sort of like not mentally but emotionally to be able to handle the pressure they put on themselves. And that doesn't get any bigger than when I've got people to first time represent England. And no matter what physical state they're in, if you're not mentally ready, you're going to not choke, but you're going to let the moment get to you. And it can become so daunting that even in a 1 hour set, I have to tell these guys, like, don't let it go too quick to not stop and enjoy the moment and appreciate what you're actually doing. If you're into any sport, you'll kind of get that, like, the duration's kind of irrelevant. What's relevant is how on track you are to where you want to do. So if you're doing a 10-minute set and you're way behind your reps for what you need, those last 8 minutes can seem forever. If you're in a 1 hour set and you're on pace, but you're having to work to keep your pace, whether it's 10 reps a minute, 11 reps a minute, that can go by in a heartbeat, because you're so focused on where you are in relation to where you need to be for like your short term and your long term. Similarly to running, if you're running a marathon and you've got qualification times on the stake or whatever, that marathon's gonna go by in a blink of an eye, because you're constantly kind of, where am I on mile 1? How am I on mile 2? How am I at this checkpoint? How am I at that checkpoint? You really don't have time to stop and go, wow, I'm running a marathon, because you're so engrossed in where are you? I know I kind of hit the wall mile 8, so I need to make sure that I'm like, where's my hydration? You've got all those things you've got to focus on. So these time scales kind of become irrelevant if you're chasing your targets. And I think if I do this in January, what I want is 1400, which would put me close enough to being able to say, despite the weight groups, because I know Andreas Jacobin's done this with the same lift and broke 1400. So if I can get that amount of reps, you can kind of turn around and say, like, I've done that as good as I think anyone can do it at the time. And then I'm happy. I don't need to do it again, because there's no rankings to get to this, because no one's really done it apart from me and a few others. So you can't get a Master of Sports world class or anything like that. So if I can get to the point where I think that's good enough for me to say it's done, I can move on to the next task that I have in my mind, if that makes sense.
So I just did the maths quickly. When you said that, you said like 1400 reps in the 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that's kind of doing 11.7 reps a minute for 2 hours. Yeah. So that's really, it's not like some people will do like a marathon running marathon, and it's like a slow jog, and it's kind of like, well, I just want to finish, so it might take me 5 or 6 hours. You're going at a good pace there for 2 hours non-stop.
It's one every 5 seconds, roughly. Isn't it?
One every 5 seconds. Yeah,
that's quite It's not like you can have a couple of seconds off as well, because then you're going to do 2 in that year.
But I think so. Again, this is going into the sport into quite depth into the techniques of it. But I think a long cycle, which is the clean and the press, is probably the easiest lift to have a steady pace throughout the whole motion. So I love, one thing that I love about the sport is the variety of the things you can do with it, which on the surface, on the outside looking in, it's just a bunch of people lifting stuff above their head again and again and again and again and again. However, if you look at the difference between, like, I love the World Games lifts that the IKMF has come up with the 40 kilogram bell, I think, and I talked to Ben Morris about it because he's doing this as well. There's something really good about being able to say you can lift that heavier kettlebell for a 10-minute set, and to be kind of like the way this has been, the way we've been lucky enough to do it is we're the group that on the ground up with this. So it came in while me, Johnny Skinner, Miguel, Kate Williams, Sarah Jarvis, Ben Morris. When this sport's 10 years in, World Games are 10 years, 20 years in, you always look at the first people doing it, and it's like, just happens to be we're the guys that get to set it, which means everyone's going to be wanting to beat the reps that you started out with, because you're going to be there to be beat. But it's very exciting to kind of be doing that right now with this sport. And then by contrast, you can do doubles for 10 minutes, which is a completely different set of parameters to do, because you can't change hands. Do a 2-hour lift, which again is completely different to train for, because it's the exact polar opposite of strength to strength endurance. And then you have your pentathlon, which is probably the most, you wouldn't think it, but trying to do it at the top level, trying to get 2,000 points at it, is probably one of the highest strength and cardio demands I think you can do in the sport. So it's nice to be able to have like a sport that has that variety. A lot of things you guys have been talking about is this current theme you guys have in a lot of your podcasts of specific rather than general, so general fitness rather than specific fitness. Kettlebells is a very specific set lifting parameters and a very specific set of training methods. However, it is possible, in my view, to be generally good at kettlebells. Like, for example, I don't train for pentathlon until after the pentathlon in September. So I'll make a point of when I go into doing Dale's competition, I haven't done any pentathlon work whatsoever. Not because I say I don't need to, but I've got other events that I'm lining for. So I go, okay, well, can I qualify off the bat off that? And if you're good at the motions, the clean, the press, the static, you should be able to kind of do that. And then now I go, right, now I know where I am. That's my base test done. I've now got 12 weeks to get as good as that as I can get for the World Championships. And then after that, I go, okay, so now this World Championships is all about my pentathlon. I'm doing the double push press for 24s, and I'm trying to do the 1 hour long cycle with a 32. Is my main goal is to do 1 hour lifting the 32 for it. Once that's done, the next competitions coming up is all based around the 40 kilogram bell again. So everything's got to completely change. But it's not like I'm starting from scratch, because being good at all of those will massively carry over into being able to lift the 40 kilogram bell. So I
was
think
just going to ask, Oli, those kind of three kind of like challenges, if you like, or events that you just listed, are they all taking part in November at the World?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
They're all you're going to do all of that over the course of like
one weekend. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've got a bit also as well. Like I did this last November. I did pentathlon. They hadn't split it, so I did pentathlon, and then I did on the first day. Then on the second day, I did the jerk, 40K jerk, 40K long cycle for 10 minutes, and then I did the marathon. And I think, again, people said, oh, you spread yourself too thin. But I kind of feel like this time I'm specifically training for all three events in the weekend. So I do a lot of work with sort of how well I can handle training the day after a heavy set. So I will do sort of specific training for it to be done in this way. So I kind of know that my marathon, which is the most important one for me, I kind of know that one's going to be at the end. So I'm kind of gearing myself up for the fact that my hands are going to be damaged, my forearms are going to be tender, parts of my body are going to ache. So I kind of make myself do my training for it at the end of the week when I haven't had a lot of rest, when I'm back to back sort of training sessions when I know my body's going to be beaten up. And there's various things that I'm kind of trying to factor in for it. But yeah, so in November, those are the three we're doing.
I think it's interesting, like you say, the generalist versus the sort of specialist that we spoke about. I know with Pat Flynn, kind of recently. I think they're talking more about for general GPP, general kind of physical preparation for probably the everyday person who wants to maintain a kind of a good level of health and fitness. But I think you guys are so, although you say there's a lot of variety within kettlebells, you are you're training as athletes for competition, aren't you? So it's very different. But I mean, Paul McElroy always talks about the fact that, if you increase your strength or your capacity within one rep range, it will extrapolate out and have a knock-on effect to, things higher up and lower down the chain as well. So if you're pressing obviously like 40, you're doing because again, your 10-minute half snatch with the 40 kilos in 10 minutes, you did like 90, where was it?
92, I think.
92.
91.
Reps.
Yeah. It was either 91 or 92,
Yeah, with the 40 kilos. So if you're doing that, then you move on to something where you're moving. I don't know what the lightest weight you work with in the pentathlon is. What would the lightest weight you compete with in the pen?
When I'm looking to, so again, I set myself these challenges. When you say it, you think, so I'm looking to do the 48 for the clean for the 6 minutes on a basis that I've never both. So I talked to Kevin, who will be really, there's a few guys. It's going to be a very interesting set to watch because there's going to be some very, very good lifters in our weight group. But Kevin, who's part of Virtue, who's coached by Finbar, me and him will be going together for that. And I know he wants to do the 48. And I kind of think in my head, like, it would be nice to get the bulk of the points done early. It's just that way up of how much damage that's going to do on your wrist for all the lifting you have to over that weekend. But lightest wise, it will probably be kind of like 26 to 28.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're doing your cleans or long
yeah,
with a 40 or 48, for the cleans, then comparatively, when you move on to a 28 or a 30 kilo belt, you get that immediate. Because I spent the because obviously as well, people might just be listening to this and not be able to see you. You compete in the kind of 75 to 85 kilo kind of which is like a kind of a middleweight kind of category, isn't it?
And I cut to get in there, so I don't walk between 75 and 85. So I'll cut. I'm just starting to see my cutting phase now. So it's because I see a lot of stuff that you do on Facebook with your breaking your fasts and things like that. So this could be quite an interesting thing about it. But yeah, I get down from I don't quote bulk, but I do a large amount of my strength training. My diet's somewhat different. So one of the things that I have is I don't think I'm that strong of an individual, which might people, when you talk about, if you don't know and you don't understand kettlebell training and you talk about a 40 kilogram kettlebell and you go and pick up a 20 kilogram kettlebell at the gym, the density of it makes it kind of almost feel heavier than it is, if that makes sense to most people. So some people might think that's a bit of an odd statement to say, but I really don't see myself as a strong individual. So I do my strength training throughout the year, and I have a set diet for that. And then when it's time to cut and time to work on my endurance, I have a very different diet to that one. So I'll lose. I was about 91 kilograms when I started cutting, and that was last Sunday when I did my official kind of like weigh in to see where I am. So I need to be under 84 kilograms for my weigh in, not 85, because the double push press has different rules. So I've got to be 83.9 is like the lightest I can get to. So it's about an 8 kilogram cut in about 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean it's fantastic,
though, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, I've trained all year. Well, I spent the first part of the year training biathlon,
right?
But I had a hand issue, and it just made snatches really difficult. So I moved on to long cycle. But right, I hadn't trained with anything than about 65 kilos, actually even less. A lot of the training was more about being able to either train the ability to relax and calm myself, or be able to momentarily explode, or be able to clear that lactic acid and maintain high levels of endurance. And so I found, in terms of my strength, that I'm naturally very endurance. I just find that easy. I never find maximal strength that easy. But I found that I didn't have much crossover into 1 rep maxes. I found, because I just wasn't used to it. I'm just not used to that type. I mean, if anything, I spend most of if I'm doing I'm given 100 reps to do on a back squat, I'm not thinking about like getting super tight constantly, because I just can't last the 5 minutes to do the so if someone says, okay, what's your back squat, I'm gonna go, I don't know, it's probably slightly was, but it might actually be less than when I was doing pure strength training, just because it's just not necessary in a way.
Yeah, I think that, and you get trained by Dennis online for your bathroom, did he say in one of your podcasts? Yeah, great. Yeah. I mean, he's one of it. I mean, I did his RUKL level 2, and it was one of the most in-depth courses I've ever done. And it was actually, we're talking about programming, it was the only kettlebell sports course I've done that included programming. None of the others talked about it. He went through nutrition. He was one of the only ones to talk about the difference between specific program training for your strength conditioning and general purpose conditioning as well. So it's such a detailed program, and he's a great online coach. I think he also talked about as well the fact that when you're first learning this and you're first getting into it, technique and relaxation is 100% the key, and particularly when you have that talk about 10,000 hours to make yourself professional proficient with something. I would do it by reps. So with snatch as well, like you said, the limiting factor you're always going to have is for the first few years doing biathlon, it's either your skin will tear on your hand on the grip, which you said, or you can't get over that freeze in your arm because you only have one hand change, and then you build up for lactic acid. And there's no right or wrong way around it. The more experienced coaches will say, we'll do another couple of thousand reps and it will go away. Whereas there are things you can do to train it to kind of shortcut the need to do the 1,000 reps. But there is definitely that thing about being able to relax, being able to breathe. I mean, particularly in biathlon, because you've got two bells sat on your chest. So again, being able to breathe with that weight on you is really, really key and really critical. So where are you on your hands at the moment? And are they all still torn up? Or you just do a long cycle?
Since I've done long cycle, I find that much easier.
Yeah,
I'm mainly tendon injury to my hand about a year ago or something. So,
right.
But I don't have any grip issues at all now. It's just the biggest challenge is often the nature of the sport, and being a busy person and having kids and all that, is literally being able to recover. It's the days when I don't expect, because I think it's a weird sport in the sense that it kind of gets rid of a lot of people, doesn't it? I mean, you kind of know there's someone who's managed the last 10 minutes or managed the half marathon. It's probably a certain kind of pedantic, stubborn person who's willing to show up in all kinds of weather and all kinds of environments and put themselves through it. But I found that, sometimes it is it's just the volume can be a challenge. If you just get one crappy night's sleep, you're playing a bit of catch up as I'm almost 44 now. I started rather late, get my body to even just assume the position and the shape and learn how to hold a position, because it's like climbers, and they have particular body shapes, don't they? They have particular shoulder positions. You look at fighters, they have particular shoulder positions. You see the way someone walks on the mat if they do BJJ, their body is molded to the sport. And certainly what I found is that I had to mold to the sport. The kettlebells weren't going to mold to me, and that's the biggest challenge I have. I go in going, right, I'm really up for this. And then I wake up in the morning and, kids have been in bed or whatever. And, and then you're just like, right, how do I get through this? And that's the challenge I find, is that recovery side.
Yeah, that's valid. I have this thing where my mindset I have is I force myself to get my workouts done early, and that's my way around it. And it's kind of a thing of like, if I need to be up and in the gym at 5 a.m. to get that first workout in, then so be it. So I try and do 2 to 3 hours training a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I kind of just do specific cardio sequences and maybe a bit of yoga. So that's maybe like 2 hours. And then the weekend's kind of there for what I'll call like any fun lifts I want to do with some friends that want to just like lift with me. Or if I've missed a set, I can catch up. But yeah, I have days where there's the difference between motivation and discipline. I'm aware also with my age that I'm at now, I've got a limited time that I'm going to be competitive in the environment that I compete at. So I kind of figure like I'll suck it up now, and then I can relax a lot in the next few years when I'm doing other things in myself. But anyone who goes into this sport is going to have to understand that it's almost like a discomfort survival sport in some senses. If you try to explain doing the sport, yes, if you're trying to hit these paces in the sets for cardio, can be really, really severe. At certain weights, strength becomes a factor, but it's not as big a factor as people think compared to endurance. But some of it is it just hurts, which is maybe why it kind of appeals to people that have done those kind of combat backgrounds. But yeah, I fully appreciate, there's days where I'm in the gym, and like if I wasn't, I've got a select group of people that want to train with me from my gym. And there's days where if they weren't there, I would have put the bells down halfway through. But just because there's someone holding me accountable, they're great people to train with. It makes a huge difference. It's one thing having to send a video off to your coach. That's one motivating factor to do it. But if while you're doing the set, you got someone looking at you thinking, well, my coach is lifting, I'm going to lift. And I'm thinking, well, I'm their coach, so I can't put the bells down no matter how much pain I'm in. And then we both put the bells down and go, that was horrible, and have a laugh about it. But yeah, I think things with that.
I was going to say, Oli, I think that's really great, because I know what we've, on the surface of it, a lot of what we've been speaking about today is very specific and very detailed around kettlebell sport. I think what you said there is really applicable to everyone, and that was that you try and get your workouts done as early as you can, because and this is something that we all kind of know, as the day moves on and you get through the day, you do get more tired. There are more opportunities for things to crop up and things to happen, and and like you said, your motivation throughout the day probably dips. So if you can get the workout done in the morning or mid-morning or lunchtime, because I for myself know there's no way in hell really that I would be training at 8 o'clock at night. Do you know what I mean? If I need to get it out of the way, ideally, in the morning or mid-morning, or lunchtime at the latest, really.
And I sometimes think when I'm PTing clients, I'm training them at 6, 7. I do my classes at 6 and my last class at 7. And so 8 o'clock, if I need to, if you have to go to work, I'll do PT spaces. And I've got a lot of admiration for someone who can get up, do an office job, go home, sort the family out, then come to me for 8 o'clock and give me some blood, guts and tears. I certainly am not I've never done any amazing sets at 8 in the evening, compared to 5 in the morning, where I've been I've been like, wow, that was an awesome workout. So it does cross slate. But the other thing as well is it depends what you want out of it. You some motivation on its own will help you. And most people that come to me because they want to lose some weight and get in shape. And you can put them through that level of discomfort. They wouldn't do, it's not a sport for someone who wants to just enjoy something and try something. It's a great sport to get into, but you have to really want to be willing to work hard, and you have to really want to be happy with the discomfort. And some people, it massively helps having things lined up to make it as comfortable as you can make it. But on some level, it is a sport for those people who are happy being uncomfortable. And again, that can give you a lot of things about. Go on.
Is this your marketing?
Yeah. Don't do the sports.
Work on your sales, I think.
No, but I think. But then at the end of it, one thing that you do get is once you've not, say you're doing your a typical biathlon training set, your cycle might start with a minute on, a minute off, and then from there you might go to 6 2-minute sets or 5-minute 2-minute sets. Then you do your kind of 3 minutes times 4, and then you get to 3 4-minute sets. And a lot of people that I work with on biathlon, at the 4, when they do their first 4 minutes, that's when you're about the lactic acid. That's when things start getting really bad. A lot of them will quit the first few times they do that. Whether I'm PTing them on the set or they're doing it as a program, they'll come back to me and go, those 4 minutes, I got 3 minutes in and I just put the bells down. But the first time they don't put the bells down and the first time they finish it, they always have a look on their face like they've really discovered that they've achieved something. And that kind of, with that discomfort, with going through that discomfort, you do kind of, you do find something about your character and something about your determination when you do something that throughout doing it, you don't want to do. And then you finish it and you go, actually, I'm tougher than I thought I was. I'm stronger than I thought I was. And that's a pretty cool thing to watch people realize about themselves. It doesn't mean they're going to go on to be a world champion, but it does mean they're going to have that kind of confidence in the back of their head of, I can do stuff that I don't really want to do, and I feel better after having done it.
I've got a question about this from what you were talking about ages ago. And because I think a lot about, so I'm 47 next month, so I think a lot about recovery, right?
You guys, I love you guys. You're making me feel a little bit younger than I'm with our friends.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
You're the youngest one on here, Oli. Don't worry.
I'll tell you what. Number one was I saw when Ben was competing at the Worlds last year. Ben Morris, friend of the show. I watched it online and I saw that Italian fella, and his arms were like my legs, and I was like, "Oh, poor Ben. How's he got? He's got to try and beat that fella because he was huge." But what I was going to say was, you were talking about. So I think a lot about recovery, because you're only as good as what you can recover from, right? And you're saying, like, you know, a lot of people might have done stuff in their 20s and 30s or whatever, and then left it until a bit later on after having kids and stuff, and they try and go back to what they were doing. But obviously you've got older and you can't recover as well. You were talking about doing 3 or 4 different events within 1 week, within 1 weekend.
Yeah.
And a lot of novices or a lot of people who get into training, like, or start smashing themselves. And then, you know, it's the classic thing, isn't it? The last 2 or 3 weeks, and then go, oh, it's not for me. I'm tired. I'm sore. And I can't do this, rather than ease into it and build up to it. So how do you, I mean, obviously yours is a bit more of an extreme example, but how much time do you have to put in to training to be able to recover within a weekend? And it's not just heart and lungs and muscles, like you say, it's achiness from bells resting on your arms, like heavy bells, and wrists, and like all that movement. How much do you have to consider that, just for people who are getting into stuff now, who are going to smash themselves? It's like, rather than, you know, it's kind of be able to say, don't smash yourself, ease into it, you've got years.
Okay. So, few points. I'll give you the honest answer about how I like survive these weekends that are coming, because one, you've got your mental preparation, because a lot of it, like I say, there's a difference. And again, this goes back to being in the forces, being in the training in forces, where again, you're asked to do stuff that really isn't nice. It's doable, but it's not nice. You know, you might roll an ankle halfway through a speed march, and you've got a speed march on that ankle for 4 or 5 miles. It's not, there's nothing that can stop you from doing it. It's just not fun. And it's that, and with the endurance side of it, it's, if your wrists start to hurt 30 minutes into an hour set, you've got 30 minutes of your wrist hurting. Now, bar 2 very strange examples that I've seen in the sport, you're very unlikely to break yourself, but it's just going to hurt for a long period of time. There's some mental preparation that you can do for that. And then there's physical preparation you can do for that. So if you know, so I know where my body hurts when I do these competitions, and particularly when I do them in succession. So I know that heavy cleans on your pentathlon are going to sort of do damage to the upper back. No matter how much you want your hamstrings to lean to it, that pull motion, your rhomboids, your lats, your rear delts, they're going to take the majority of the pounding. When you're doing extended weights on your forearm, 40 kilograms or 32 kilograms for extended periods of time, the pressure is on your forearms and your wrists. So then there's things you want to look at. So I know exactly where I'm going to get beaten up. So I can do as much work for mobility, strength, endurance of my upper back to preempt it. I can do as much work, even down to the diet, to densify my bones while trying to cut, which is pretty hard to do. And exercises to densify the actual bones, like old martial arts exercises. Like we used to get our belts out and whip our forearms so we could block and have denser bones, right? But again, just doing press ups in your fists rather than on your hands to densify the actual bone. There's things like that that you can do. And then when it comes to the day, it's those, like, your preparation can be done to take your mind off stuff. So I will have, like, and this comes down to performance, I'll have things I can remember having things I would do before I'll go on stage that I would do every time before I'll go on stage, little routines, little rituals, and they kind of, it's setting yourself up for what you would do. Laying your kit muster before you go and exercise, or before you go in operationally, before you deploy. Yeah, it's good to lay your kit out. It's really, it really makes sense. But also it's a habit that you do before you do it, almost like saying that you perform time after time. I'll have very specific things I'll do for my warm-ups for the parts of the bodies that I'm going to do. I'll have I'll try and do the same thing every time before I go on to a stage, to a platform to lift. But also the other end to it, and this is probably the less like scientific or the less like welcome answer, is you have good pain relief. Yeah, you use a lot of deep heat, you use a lot of Tiger Balm, you use a lot of painkillers, and then you make sure you recover. And that's making sure you recover means, again, you go and you get the massages, you jump in the ice bath, you jump in the sauna, you do all of that at the right times for it. One thing with sports I've learned, and I learned this very early on, is everybody, for every argument you want to make, there's a study to say it's right and a study to say it's wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't think I know any more than anybody else that does the sport. What I think I've done is I've found things that work for me. And I don't go on, Pete.
Sorry, carry on.
And I think when I'm mindful that I used to think, like when I was PTing years ago, I had my diet plan and it was my diet plan. And I believed my own hype. And I had a wake up moment when I was listening to a guy talking about keto. I went down this keto rabbit hole and I went down this intermittent fasting rabbit hole. And I still think it's great. Like for me, it works really well. And I think for endurance sports, there's a lot to be said for it. I just don't think it's the one diet that everybody should do. Because some people, like if you're a vegetarian or if you're a vegan, like good luck being on a keto diet. You can eat, you can eat nuts. That's it. Like just go and eat some nuts, and maybe if you're lucky, you might get hold of an avocado, right? If you don't like meat, good luck on a keto diet, right? So I found things that work for me, and I found things that work differently for some of my clients. So not everybody that I coach for Kettlebell Sports like does it the same way as me. I've got a body type. I've got that typical middleweight fighting, long arms, long legs, short torso. I've got one of the best lifters, one of the most accomplished lifters that I work with, Alistair Lee. He's a completely different build to me. He's a massive engine with very short arms and stupidly big legs. So he has to hold the belt differently. He can rest the belt. He can't really rest in the rack, but he can rest overhead like nothing. So his breathing rhythm's different to me. His pattern's different to me. It makes no sense to go, you have to do it my way because it's the way. What you need to do is you need to work out what works best for your lifters, as long as you can back it up and you're not kind of making it up on the spot, and you can actually do a bit of your own work and a bit of trial and error. That works much better. So for doing these long weekends, I'm sure other people do it differently. I like to do all the prep I can beforehand. I like to be as sensible as I can when I'm there. But then at the end of the day, I do take a lot of painkillers, grit my teeth and lift. And that's as unscientific as it gets.
I think in all of that, though, what you've just kind of said is that saying, see, if I don't know if I remember this rightly, but you don't fall back to your level of training, you fall back to your level of habit or whatever it is, isn't it? Yeah. So when you're knackered in that space, so you've just done a set and you're like, I've got to do another one in like a few hours time or whatever. You don't train for that. You just do it. Like what you just said, laying out your kit and stuff like that. It's something that you just do without even thinking about it. And then that's where you fall back to, because your training can get you so far, but then when the shit hits the fan, basically, let's face it, because it'll happen every time, because that's what you train. That's you're training for when the shit hits the fan, and then after that, it's all your habits, isn't it? Yeah. So that's my understanding from that, anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely what I lean back on. And you can in some senses, you can align your training throughout the week to mean that your hardest sets come back after back after back to kind of help you with that. And people might argue that that's really bad. You're going to get overtraining, you're going to start getting injuries. It tends to work for me. Whether I'd recommend it for somebody else or not is into perspective.
Mark Rifkind said it's great being uploaded. I've been uploading all these podcasts and I've been remembering them all as I'm uploading them. That was a good one. That was a good one. But he said he always does his best lifts on a Saturday because he competed in gymnastics, he competed in bodybuilding, he competed in powerlifting, endurance. He's done everything over his life, hasn't he? And he's
and they always used to compete on Saturdays.
And he always used to compete on a Saturday. Like Saturdays are his day because he's done it his whole life. Yeah.
I mean, I have a thing where like I'll plan my programming quite rigorously, and then I've got a guy who I don't know if you guys know him, but Lucas, who's on the Polish team, but he lives nearish me. He can't get to the gym when my classes are on, so I kind of train him online mostly with the programs. But Saturday morning, he'll message me Friday night about 9-10 o'clock and go, Oli, we're going to be at the gym at 7 tomorrow. We're going to do this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then whatever I've trained for, it doesn't matter if it's fresh muscles or tired muscle groups. And he's going to get up and drive from Telford to my gym, I'm not going to say, actually today I just want to have a bit of a light session and maybe do a bit of recovery work. He's a big lad. He likes to lift big weights. So he's like, yeah, we'll do that. And I just kind of do it with him. And some of the clients will say, like a lot of clients sometimes want me to do sets with them. So a lot of people would go, I'm really worried about my 20-minute test. You want me to get this many reps? Do you mind doing it with me? I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that's fine. So let's put it in here. And it comes out as a curveball. Sacrifice for it, yeah, I probably don't get as much rest as other people do that kind of stick to their recovery dogmatically. But then the upside to it, kind of like at any point in time, no matter how I might not be up for it, I've got that mentality that I'll just do it. I'll just lift, that kind of like, yeah, why not? Like, you're going to suffer, I'll suffer too. Let's do it together. Let's lift. And I think that, like, that phrase, I don't know what level, what clothing brand it is, but I've got some belts. It just, the logo on a belt just says sharpen the axe. And I quite like that as a mindset, to have that mindset that kind of like at any point in time, you're willing to pick a challenge. And those challenges don't always come to you right after your massage, after your sauna, when you're all warmed up and ready to go. Life doesn't really work like that. And sports in many ways like a replica of life. So I'd like to think that it may not be my best set, it may not be a PB, but if tomorrow somebody went, I reckon me and you could do 100 reps each on a 40, I'll go, yeah, okay. And like the best person I have for that in my social group is probably Johnny Skinner, if you guys know who he is. Because he turned up at my gym the other day. He wanted to pick up some weight I was selling. And he was, do you remember he did that 48 last summer? Let's do it again. And he just kind of like, yeah, why not? Like, let's do it. We were down in Triathlete and he was like, Ollie, should we do 3 minutes and a 48 together? And I just said, well, yeah, okay. Why, yeah, let's have a go for it. And it's not the best lifting, but it's very, very good for getting you in that mindset. Like, there are other people at the sport in Triathlete we were talking to, and we're saying, why don't you come and do a 5-minute set for fun, and from other sports and other things. And some of them would, and some of them were some pretty high level athletes were going, oh, I can't, my coach has me on a deload lift. Oh, I can't. I've got a heavy set at the gym tomorrow. And yeah, fair enough. It probably is a lot of sense to them, but it kind of shows the difference in mentality of, my body's ready to do something that's tough. Let's give it a go, which I kind of like to embody. And it also kind of, that ethos knocks down among our team, and our team have done pretty well for ourselves. So I think I'll take that over a real rigid kind of, you need this much rest between it because this study said that, which I don't hold as much faith in as, is your mindset ready to just pick it up and go?
I suppose it's quite good because at competitions and things, like I haven't done it for 10 years, but I used to box and things. And sometimes, you, like you say, you turn up at an event and you think you're on, say, 10th, and then they suddenly say, oh, we're moving you, you're on 5th or whatever, or there's a couple of really quick knockouts and you kind of got to go quicker than quicker than you thought. And so I suppose in the same way at your competitions, there might be an example where, your timings get changed around. Suddenly you've got to be ready to go. You maybe thought you had more time to rest, but doing these kind of impromptu kind of things whereby almost like you say, at the drop of a hat, you can sort of turn on and do it, I think is fantastic. I'm really aware, Ollie, that we're going a little bit over time. So what I did want to ask you about as well is it your little girl? Is your daughter Poppy? Is that? Yeah.
She'll be.
Yeah.
You might be able to catch her in an interview. She'll be coming back from school in a minute. She's an absolute superstar. She got into this, and I wanted to be very, very conscious that I wasn't being that pushy parent pushing my dreams onto my daughter. So her heart is in dance, but she started coming to the nationals with me, and she wanted to come to, I think Belgium might have been her first competition last November, but she came to, and she competed in that one. But my girls, without me sounding like a bad parent, my gym's quite a family-friendly gym, and my girls pretty much live there. So she's grown up watching me do various sports, and she's grown up watching me do sort of various like challenges and things like that. And she's always wanted to kind of try stuff for herself. So she's doing 2 lifts this time in Hungary. But really in her heart, she wants to be a dancer and a gymnast. And I kind of said, well, look, it will help you get strong. It will help you lift. And if it helps get younger people into the sport, and if people, when you've got a kid and you see someone else's kid doing that, it kind of helps build that sense that the sport's quite family like oriented, which it is in a good way. So yeah, Poppy is bless her, she's probably as well known in the kettlebell community as I am, for the right reasons. But yeah, she'll be there for Hungary, and then if she decides, she's got some dance stuff coming up that would take her into the next year. So if she decides that that's the time in which she wants to step away and just focus on that, that's fine. If she wants to carry us on and go, I think we're going to Nyborg next year before we host, hopefully, the IKMFs this 2024. If she's around for that's 100% her decision. I kind of make the point of letting her know that it's she's doing it because she wants to do it. Rather than I'm kind of etching her in for it.
Yeah, because how old is Poppy? Because I saw her compete, obviously in Northampton. Did she do the previous year in Northampton?
Yeah, she did. Yeah, so that was the first.
Yeah.
That was the first one she did. Was in Northampton. So she's 8 now. She started when she was 6, and I think Dell kind of like allowed us to go a little earlier because I think 7's meant to be the age. She was 7 when she went in for the international comps, but she's done a few at the age of 6. I think you've got kid gymnasts, you've got kids doing all sorts of sports. The idea that just because there's a weight involved, oh my god, it's dangerous, it's going to ruin a back. I've never found much merit in that.
No, it's fantastic. So I've got a daughter myself who's 7, and I showed her the picture of what I love is when Poppy's competing, the chair behind her, she's got like her Barbies and all that, and the dolls sort of for support, kind of watching her behind her, and it's so lovely because she's the only little one there, isn't she? She was in Northampton anyway. It's just and I just think it a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is, we're talking to people in maybe their 40s, their 50s, and so on, and people with children, and the way that you really. Kids do what you do, not what you say, don't they? You lead by example. So, I was going to say,
I was going to say that is because Oli's, kind of like what most people say who are really into something like this is like, I don't want to push it on my kids, but they want to get involved because that's what they see. For me, when I was growing up, my dad smoked and drank and all of that, and he didn't want to push that on me, but guess what I ended up doing? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one of those things because some people are going to think, oh, you're a pushy parent if your kid's doing what you're doing. It's like, and some people do that, but
yeah,
the majority of the time, I think it's just because you're the example and they're like, I want to be like my dad, why not?
Yeah. And also I think as well, like there's nothing wrong in allowing your kids to pursue something if it's going to be for their good, and there's nothing wrong with letting them find their own way about it. And she's certainly got things that she wants to grow up and do that are completely different to what like her mum or myself have ever done. But she also has, like you said, like if you've got a role model to look up to that's healthy and is going to challenge you, push in a good way, that's only going to form like good things. The way I see it, and my justification for her doing it was she really wants to be a dancer. And a lot of kids her age are going to not have sort of the strength that she has because she's got a very good deadlift, and she does some weights with me. So she can do a good deadlift, she can back squat, she can press, she can run, but also she's already handled the nerves of being in a performance-based environment at a young age. When it comes to serious dance competitions, gymnastic competitions, that gives her that confidence to not be the nervous person. And again, going back to like not letting the moment get the better of you and just having that in your memory bank of, do you know what, I was scared when I did that kettlebell competition and I still went and did it. And now I feel like I can go and do stuff. If she walks away from the sport at a very early age and keeps that and takes that into whatever she's going to do next, it's a little bit like that drama background. I never made it onto a big stage, but I've got the confidence to go out and push myself into things that I'm not that, that other people would be like, I'm not going to do that because like, what if I don't win? Which is completely the wrong reasons to get into a sport. But having that confidence of, I'm happy for people to see me at my best on a platform, and I'm happy for people to see me at my worst on a platform. It doesn't that doesn't bother me. It allows me to kind of focus on what I want to accomplish and what's there for me. If she picks that skill up for this, then she's only learned a good trait that's gonna help her go forward into whether it's a big boardroom meeting or whether it's the pressure of being at a national gymnastics competition in 2 or 3 years' time.
Mm. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. No, and I did want to mention her because she's a little star, and it's so, it's, I love love seeing her competing when I was there. That's really great, Ollie. I mean, that's been really good. And I think for those people who are interested in kettlebells, in kettlebell sport, but also a lot of the stuff that you talked about there with regards to discipline and mindset and training, and I think there's carryover to kind of everyone there, regardless of whether they're looking to compete or just improve themselves and their health and their fitness. So thank you so much. Ollie, if people do want to follow you and find out more about what you do and kind of see what's going on and maybe have a look at your gym and that sort of thing, what's the best avenue for people to do that?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're on Wolfpack Fitness Cheshire on Facebook, and we're Wolfpack Fitness Cheshire on Instagram. And then if they want to come and just see what I'm doing, I've only got my own Facebook, but you're welcome to come and take a look at that. So that's just Oli Mell on Facebook. The gym is in sort of the heart of Cheshire in Nantwich. We do like I do stuff online, but I keep that mainly based on the kettlebell sports. So we have a few options and avenues that way that people can get in touch about. But the main thing for me is just to grow the interest in the sport. So don't follow me, follow England Kettlebell Association, follow DIKMF, follow the WKSF. I'm the sport development officer for the EKA, and I've got a big sort of plan to try and get this sport in school systems and this sport at the university level. I think there's this big, my closing thing is like, my biggest thing about the sport that we should be thinking about is, can we leave the sport bigger than when we found it? And no matter what you win medal wise, no matter what records you have, someone's going to beat them, someone's going to break them. But if we can be the group of lifters that make the sport a lot bigger in this country and a lot more viable as an option for people who want to get into something that's tough, then that's a much better thing to pursue. So yeah, by all means follow Wolfpack Fitness, but follow kettlebells, follow, go and find the live streams, go and find the YouTube videos, and go and watch some of the sports and see some pretty decent stuff. And hopefully that gauges people and engages them to go and try it.
Excellent. I think that really, although it's at the highest level and a competitive level, like you said, it is a very tough sport and it requires a lot of being uncomfortable. I think it's also got the potential to be a very accessible sport for lots of people because the barrier to entry in terms of cost, in terms of equipment, in terms of space required, it's a very accessible sport as well if you want to use it for your own health, fitness, wellness, and just to do what you can with it without trying to get to world-class level or national championships. I mean, I think it's say in schools, in universities, for people in general, I think it's got so much scope there.
It's one of the best communities I've ever found. And I think the people from my gym that joined it, that were first daunted by the idea of doing a competition, and they've said that the friends they've made, like I'm friends with pretty much everybody I've competed against, which is a very weird thing to me and Finbar talk on Facebook. He's beaten me. Me and Miguel, we talk. Me and Johnny Skinner, we talk a lot. Kevin and I talk. For people that I've sort of beaten in the past, we'll stay in touch. We'll talk. We'll go to the comps and have a beer. And it's such a good community at all levels. It's definitely the most inclusive sport I've ever been involved in.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you are, like you say, it's you're competing against these people, but really you're stood on a platform yourself with a kettlebell competing. It's not a combative sport like a fighting sport or like tennis or like something where you're going head to head with someone, is it? You're both just doing the absolute best you can, aren't you, for yourself, and one of you is going to come out on top. But no, I think it's fantastic. Pete, as we wrap up, anything you'd like to finish with?
I'd thought of something earlier and I forgot what it was because it's just been no. it's just been great. I've had like everything Ollie's been saying. I've had like loads of stuff going around in my head of like, oh, I've got a question on that. I've got a question on that, but it's all kind of just
I
exploded in my
ranted
head.
too quick for you.
No. Honestly, it's yeah. There was something you said earlier again, like towards the end. Oh no, that's what I was going to say. I've just remembered. Yeah, so it was about Poppy doing gymnastics, and she might,
Yeah.
you know how you were saying, like, you know, she can walk into a room now and there's people everywhere and she won't get intimidated. She might do gymnastics because it's not full of like bearded massive blokes. She'll be like, oh no, it's intimidating all these kind of like women around and like these blokes looking all buff and all that. No, that's a bit weird. Anyway.
Paul,
nothing of merit.
Paul, anything as we wrap up?
No, it's good to obviously meet someone who's in the UK, because we see the Russians and they have the history and their and obviously the elite level that it is over in the former Eastern blocs. It's good to see it kind of growing in this country, particularly after the pandemic, which kind of threw everything out. And I think the key for kettlebell sport is, from an outsider's point of view, even though I train it, I still, I'm not really part of a community, but is to know is that sometimes there's so many different things to know what the sport is, in a way, like what a triathlon is. You got Olympic triathlon, you got sprint triathlon, you got Ironman. And there's some other stuff, but I think that's the key thing for the marketing of kettlebell sport is like that is my sport. You know what Olympic lifting is? Yeah, there's weight categories, it's the snatch, the jerk, and whatever. But with the kettlebell sport, there's biathlon, there's long cycle, there's half marathon, there's marathons, there's relays. In a way, it's like a mini Olympics when you go there. There's so many things. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it is system of a sport rather than an event, almost like a kind of kettlebell, not CrossFit, because that's not really doing it. It's not, because it's very highly disciplined, so but it's knowing how to say this is what it is.
It would be good. It would be, mentioning CrossFit, it would be good if in 5 years time people would see a kettlebell and go, oh, kettlebell sports, instead of seeing a kettlebell and go, oh, CrossFit. Like that would be a big change. Right?
Because the kettlebell is so malleable. I mean, I can imagine people doing kettlebell sport and then doing a half-mile run and then doing a 5-minute. There's so many different things you could do.
Yeah.
In a way, you've got to narrow it, haven't you? Just to make it understandable, particularly if it's not Olympic sport.
Cool. Oli, Lauren Emery's at my gym, and she's obviously coming out with you, I think, in November.
Yeah.
She said hello, and she was looking forward to this podcast with you. She said it's going to be good, and I spent.
We're going to be.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
So it's going to be. It's one of the England's team now. We're the strongest we've ever been, thanks to people like Lauren, and Dell's done a great job sort of helping guide this team together. And I don't want to take things for granted, because it is, it is what it is. But we've won the belt for the nations 2 years, two events in a row, and if we can do it a third one, she'd have been a big part of that. So I'm ready for it. I hope, I'm sure she is. I'm sure everyone else is. She's a great asset to the team, and we've got a real good strong core now. So it's looking good for November.
Excellent. And then I was just the weekend gone. I was just with Gareth Malloy all weekend.
He's strong first. You did your strong first certificate, weren't you?
Yeah, he was. He was out there doing. He was actually doing the certificate to, as an instructor kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he's so good, because he was. We were doing the press section, and the heaviest bell they've got there is 48. And we did the whole press thing, and they said, let's see if anyone can get like a PR in the press. And he'd never pressed a 48 like strict before.
Yeah.
And he cleaned it, and he did 2 presses one side, swung 2 presses the other with his 48, and it just it flew up, And,
he's a strong dude. I bet he had a nice grin in his face while he was doing it as well. He's a strong lad.
Yeah, he was good. But no,
Did you see Finn's comment on your thing, your foot?
Yeah, I did, because he said
Finn
he
was
said-
like, "Oh, make sure he gets through that 28 kilo for 5 reps strength test." Okay.
But he had to do he did the 5-minute snatch or 100 rep snatch test with a 28.
Yeah.
And he literally, it was so controlled, and he wasn't even out of breath at the, it was just so.
There's some people that you can call them an outliner, you can call them whatever you want to call him, but he's just one of them. Just the sheer, like, it's one thing being strong, but being controlled and strong, and the technical skill he's got there. It's gonna be great to see him as well. Like, it's great to see everyone. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to like getting everybody together, seeing what we can do, and being a part of it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, Oli, thank you so much, mate. It's been lovely having you on. I'm sure we'll probably have you on in the future again. And I know we're gonna talk, aren't we, as well, about the knees over toes stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we didn't even get around to that. No, yeah, I'd be great to come back on and talk to you guys. And
Yeah.
I've started the ATG program, so I could tell you about how I've found that and results I've had, and really how it relates to the sport, which is pretty untested. So it'll be a good thing to get into the other side of the competition, maybe.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, maybe we'll catch up with you kind of like back end of the year or early next year once you've got all of the the November comp out the way and things.
Yeah, definitely.
No, brilliant. Yeah, and we'll stay in touch now. Thanks so much, Oli, for coming on. Right, so guys, next week we will be back with episode 166, where our guest will be Louise Greer, who is No Legs No Limit on Instagram, a really, really inspiring young lady who Pete and I first met at the Britain's Disabled Strongman and Strongwoman a few months ago. She's going to be on with us next week, so we'll look forward to that. Thank you so much for listening. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave a review if you are listening or watching on a platform that allows you to do so. And like I said at the start, if you can go onto YouTube and give us a subscribe on there, that would be greatly appreciated. And check out Pete's handiwork on healthoddity.com. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.